I am fascinated to see what Dan Lanning does with the Ducks' latest commit.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Is Oregon baseball actually behind in NIL, or is it a different situation? I will discuss that later on the show and some thoughts on recruiting in the Dan Lanning era as well, which overall goes very well. As Brian Smith knows, longtime recruiting analyst here on the show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/locked on. Speaking of great operations, Brian, Dan Lanning runs one of those, and as I talked about on the last episode of this show, they have landed some commits in this cycle, more I think than normal, that you'd see as kind of flyer developmental prospects. And Josh Christensen from Lake Oswego, my alma mater, is the latest of those guys. You checked out his film. I'm fascinated to see what happens with him. I think he could change positions. What did you see?
He is very difficult to pin down on his future position, because you look at him and he's give or take, he's listed at 6'6", so he's probably about 6'5", but he's long at the hip. Is he going to weigh 300? Is he going to weigh 275? So you got to break down his film from the projection of like three different positions, plus the Ducks run different kinds of fronts. This is like calculus. This is not a basic algebra scenario. So when they're going to run their traditional four-man line that you see most places, he could be a strong side end because Dan likes big guys, but he might bump him inside in certain plays. And that's where you get into the chess pieces. Nothing that an offensive coordinator hates more, especially third and fourth down. You don't change personnel, but they line up in different spots on each point. Like, that is super annoying. You want to know exactly who's going to be where. This kind of guy that might play inside and outside. That is a chess piece. Again, the length, that's something else Dan's been really good with, finding guys. You get their hands up, make it more difficult to see. Like, one deflection could be the difference, Spencer, in winning or losing a football game, because a lot of those go the other direction. Linebacker says, thank you very much, and then he's off to the races. You know, his one shot at glory is right there because of his deflection from a buddy. Maybe Josh is going to be that guy. So he's 6'5", 6'6", but right now he's 250, and he looks, I know it sounds weird, but he's 250 and he looks thin. I don't know what he weighs now, but he was listed at 250. I bet he's bigger than that now. He's probably 260, 265. By the time football season comes back around, these kids don't stay static. They're going to go up. I think he'll end up at least playing some inside at 3-tech or as a 4-eye in a three-man line. But he's a good athlete, man. He can bend. Like, if he was, no offense to your alma mater, location matters. They're not getting a lot of scouts heading out to Lake Oswego.
No.
So
no, this is
not goal
rare
season for this area right now, for them to be recruiting. But look, he's a big dude that can move and he plays 100 mile an hour. There's always a place for a kid like that. And I'm glad Dan will take a local kid. If you're going to take a flyer, take the dude that's an hour and a half from your campus or whatever it is, that's going to play hard. I mean, Bear Bryant used to talk about that all the time. I'll take the kid that's slightly less talented, but wants to play for State U over the out-of-state kid every time. Bear Bryant knew a thing or two about football.
Yeah, he did. And the interesting thing with Josh Christensen is, he said in an interview he might be open to, playing a different position that would involve adding weight. But, I mean, I could see three different things playing out here. Maybe he does stay at edge. Like, I don't watch him and think, he's coming off the edge the same way that Oregon has with other guys like Mateo Uyunglele right now. Even though physically he has the same type of measurables. I think Mateo's up to around 275 at this point in time, but he's not as twitchy. He's not as athletic. He's not as bendy to me as Mateo was coming out of high school. I think it's why he's not as highly rated of a recruit. And high school matters as well. But I don't think Josh is a supremely underrated guy from a recruiting ranking standpoint. Like, I didn't turn on his film and go, oh my gosh, how is this guy, right? Like, you said that about Anthony Jones, not Tank Jones, but Anthony Jones in Oregon's 2026 class. I told you where he was rated, and you said, yeah, no way. That's way too low. I don't think that's what's going on here, but I could see him playing strong side defensive end at a 275, 280 weight. But honestly, Brian, and I want your thoughts on this, he looks like a guy to me who, if he got up to 290, 300 or so, has the hand movement to be a lot like a guy who you've also talked highly of on this show that could be in for a breakout season. And Matthew Johnson, defensive line from the Southern California area. That's kind of what it looks like to me, because, man, every offensive lineman just seems like they're having a tough time getting and keeping their hands on him. And that's really useful for guys on the interior. But I could see him bulking up to maybe even over 300 pounds. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's definitely a possibility. I remember when Tom Osborne flipped his switch at Nebraska in the early 90s, they went to the Florida State defense. They literally went out to Tallahassee and learned it. It took a bunch of guys like this, added just a little bit of weight, and they went from end to D tackle. It's the exact same thing. They wanted length and first step quickness. They went from top 15 program to a top 3 program overnight. That's what you're trying to find. Guys that can get up the field and be disruptive. I don't know if Josh is going to be a 2-gap kind of guy. I don't know if he's got that kind of frame to, like, hold on. That's a special kind of animal there. But going downhill, and he already uses his hands well. Good observation. I think he's been coached pretty well. He could be a menace as a guy on 3rd and 7 guards. Look, no offense. There's a reason guys play tackle and guys play guard, and it's pass protection. Almost always that's the key. There are a few exceptions in the world, but for the most part, guards are guards for a reason. He's not going to have any problem maneuvering in one-on-ones past a 310-pound guy that's a guard. You can use that as another form of a chess piece. And at 285 to 300-pound range, he would be enough at that size, like in a 4-man front, where he's not getting doubled all the time. He could probably hold his own in the run game too. I think he's a pretty good athlete. Again, the competition in Oregon is just so. It's hard to grade, but he's murdering what seems like a lot of small children out there in some ways on the football field. But
sometimes he's literally going against small children.
But like when you play against lesser, though, being serious, you have to dominate. You can't play like, I'm just, I'm going to take a half step off the gas here. No. That's not how it works. That's when you get beat, because I'm sure that he's by far their best player. I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Yeah, I'd imagine they don't have a guy that's rated higher. There is another recruit in the state or on his team that I don't think even has a star ranking at this point in time. But yeah, Oregon's just locking down the state of Oregon, which is not usually a hotbed. I mean, Josiah Molden's a really good player, but it's not like, Oregon's going out there and doing all of this, and it's it is kind of brand new, but it's not, a brand new exciting venture. It's just kind of, okay, sure. I see the angle that they're attacking this from. But last thing I'll get you out of here on, Brian, is he's listed 250 pounds. Look, maybe he gets to let's say he's 265 as a senior, being in the weight room and continuing to eat and whatnot. How hard is it if he were to want to go to up to, let's say, 300 pounds and try to play as a legitimately bulky defensive tackle type of guy? How hard, and you've covered recruiting for a long time, how hard is that? How long can that take for a guy to do?
Sometimes it's more than a year because it's more mental than it is physical. That first step, I'm just going to blow by this guy that's probably not very good in front of me in high school, to all of a sudden you're going against Oregon linemen in practice plus another 30 to 50 pounds. I mean, that's got to be like, if you make any false step or expose your chest, yeah, you're getting blasted. You're not as fast. So you have to recondition yourself, not physically, but mentally first, because you're going to have to play with your hands and feet better than just like trying to blow by guys. That's not going to happen anymore. You're going to have to be able to move people. You're going to have to be able to probably at least consider hey, I might be using some situations where I'm just eating up space. Like all that's different because right now he's speed rushing guys. He can dip pretty good. He's got pretty good hips. So I think it's at least a year of adjustment. And he's probably like, even elite kids that go to Oregon right now, they're one of the top 5 programs in the country in D-line production in terms of talent. I mean, that's a conservative estimate. He ain't playing next year anyway, so it's not a big deal. They can decide what's best for him when he enrolls, but they'll probably have a very specific plan so he's not overwhelmed. You don't want kids to feel out of body and like, I don't know if I want to do this, because then you just lose a whole year.
Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst, friend of the show, host of the Portal podcast here at the Locked On Network. Check him out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Brian, we appreciate the time. As always, it feels like it isn't a great spot for Oregon baseball right now. It doesn't feel like they are in a good spot is a better way to say that. Is it actually as bad as it seems? College baseball expert coming on to talk about that when we get back right here on Locked On Ducks. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos can show up fast. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a winning team. Indeed is here to help you out. So yesterday I made this offer, hypothetically, but not really on the show, that if I were going to hire someone to help me with the show, I got a response in the YouTube comments, like 3 or 4 comments from the same guy saying, hey, I'll do this, that, and here's the offer and all that sort of stuff. I don't know that it was actually serious, but I wasn't serious because I wouldn't look to hire somebody in the YouTube comments. I would do it on Indeed. That's where I'd post the job. That's where I'm going to find the best person for whatever role I am seeking. And get this, listeners, including me, of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you for making this show your first listen every day. If you tune in to every episode and want to level up, check out the Locked On Everydayer Club for $5 a month or $50 for the year. Get access to ad-free audio on podcasts, access to members-only Discord chat where I hang out all the time, and other perks as well. Click the link in the description of this episode and become a Locked On Everydayer Club member today. Is Oregon actually behind, or will everything be okay on the diamond? To talk about that, Mark Garland of the College Baseball Show here to discuss. So not the sort of off-season beginning that Duck fans were hoping for, Mark, after a 3rd super regional appearance in the last 4 years. Oregon rode that wave this season with another great lineup, a much improved and really pretty good pitching staff, and they had 3 true freshmen that were leading the charge in that lineup, and 2 of them will not be on the roster next year. Now, I am pleased to report, I have been told by multiple people, Braden Jackson is expected to return to the Ducks. He'll start at catcher next year. That's great. But Angel Laya and Junior Lauaki going into the portal, man, that hit me like a Brinks truck a little bit, Mark. How did it land to you?
I was very shocked, actually, from both. And I think people inside the program were shocked, and I think people around college baseball were quite shocked to see Angel and Junior enter the portal. I think that we thought, hey, successful season. Wallace has this really good team moving forward. Oregon seems to be on the up and up and being able to, compete in the NIL market. But seeing those 2 guys enter the portal was really shockwaves across college baseball.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to get an understanding of the baseball landscape because I think this surge has started to grow the popularity of it in Eugene, but it's still in the earlier stages. But a couple people I talked to said, no, Oregon's not uncompetitive in the NIL space. We should expect to see both of these guys, and I said this right when they went in the portal. I said, that's got to be SEC. Like, that just screams SEC. Are those schools that far ahead of everybody else from an NIL standpoint?
I'd say the top 10 are that far ahead of everybody else. Yeah, I'd say like the Texases, A&Ms, Arkansas, like that branch, LSUs, they are that far ahead of everybody else in money right now. And Do I think everybody else is catching up? I do. I think that the general population of those top 25 teams, the perennial top 25ers, are starting to catch up to those guys, but there's still a pretty big gap there with how much money they can offer in a short term. And I think that that's what we're starting to see is like even these guys at these big Power 4 schools are still being pulled away. Guys from ACC, guys from Big 12 are being pulled away for the SEC money. And these SEC programs want to win now. They know that the best way to do that is go out and go get these best young players that they can add to their roster today.
Now, Oklahoma just won the national championship. They blew out North Carolina in Game 3. The Mariners had an off day, and I was glad that the game was on because I was like, oh, great, a baseball game I'm interested in. Yeah, Oklahoma ran away with that really quickly. Now, the exciting thing about college baseball as a whole, Mark, is that you never know. You can be UCLA, one of the most dominant regular seasons in recent memory. See ya. You hosted a regional, doesn't matter. It's baseball. Man, the Dodgers spend more than everybody else. They're going to lose at least 60 games this year, right? Like it's just the way that baseball plays out. So for Oregon to take that next step, which is getting to Omaha, I don't think they've been there since 1954, I believe, was what was the last time. For them to do that, do you think it will require a greater NIL commitment than what they currently have? Do you think that their budget, based on what you've been told, is good enough to get them to the College World Series?
I think it's right there. Honestly, like everybody I've talked to inside the program and my conversations with the coaching staff and everybody around the program and talking to all these other schools, I cover all 309 Division I baseball schools. They're right there. They're in that top 1% of all these teams. And you've seen it. 3 super regionals is nothing to go. Like that's really hard to do. That's really hard in this game. As you said, people can go out and lose on any weekend. That's all it takes to not get to a super regional. And the Ducks have been so close to making sure to get that next step, to get to Omaha. They're not that far off, Spencer. Honestly, I think that they're really close. And the NIL money, while it's not up there with some of those SEC teams, it's enough to compete and it's enough to at least win out the West Coast. So I think that we're going to be real close to seeing the Oregon Ducks get there. I had them before the portal opened. I had them as one of my early Omaha 8 teams. I still like their pitching staff a lot. I like what they have on the mound. I like what they're returning. I love their coaching staff. I think that they're another one of those teams that's going to be real close for me to be put in my early Omaha 8 teams.
It would be a welcome sight for sure after being so close, because Oregon fans, not just in baseball, Mark, I can tell you, we've been doing the whole knock at the door but don't walk through it for a long time in many areas. Like, oh, it's right there. Oh, it's right there. And it feels worse than it is because there are a lot of programs that are very worse off. But I want to go back to something that you said that really stood out to me, that you believe Oregon is in the top 1%, and yet they still didn't have enough to keep these guys. And look, I have not heard anything with regards to locker room issues or a dislike of the coaching staff or anything. Like, I've heard that this is a financial decision because the SEC programs these guys are likely to end up at, they have not gone anywhere as we record this particular segment. They're just offering significantly more to the point where they have to, because it's a borderline life-changing amount of money.
Yeah, it is. And that's what it comes down to. Everything I've heard, 2 great kids that like the program, that like being in the program, it came down to agents and money and saying, hey, there's money out there that's on the table. You guys are top end prospects. Like, that's what it comes down to, is that there's going to be a large sum of money deposited in their bank accounts for this change. And whatever school they end up at, I would guess that it's going to be somewhere in the $300,000 to $500,000 range is what we're kind of looking at. And that's kind of the typical amount to pay a top end player nowadays. And on 64 Analytics, we got Angel Laya ranked number 3 right now. Like, he's the number 3 prospect out there that's open. So the fact is, to get the number 3 player in, you're going to have to spend quite a bit of money. And I'd say he'd be probably closer to that, if not over that $500,000 money now.
Yeah, I mean, these guys combined for around 30 home runs this year. I don't remember their exact stats, but I mean, they were true freshmen. And I think the frustrating part about it from an Oregon standpoint was you saw this core, Lauaki and Laya and Jaxa, and they're true freshmen, and they just led you to a super regional. Like, the equivalent in football would be a team. I guess basketball is probably an easier comparison. Well, 22 starters in football. if you had a trio of true freshmen that came in, like for Oregon basketball, Jackson Shelstad, KJ Evans, and Mookie Cook once upon a time, if those three guys as true freshmen led Oregon to the Sweet 16, you'd be going, oh my gosh, what are they going to be when they're juniors and seniors? Because remember, in college baseball, you have to stay for 3 years, right? It's like football in that regard, not like basketball where you can be a one and done, but in an off season where Jackson Shelstad's at Louisville now because Oregon basketball wasn't able to give as big of an offer as what the Cardinals were willing to commit. I think it fed into this idea that, you know, Oregon doesn't care. And I don't think they care about other sports as much as football, but to say that they don't care or that they aren't competitive or that you can't still expect them to be good or compete, it doesn't seem like that is actually the case, even though that runs contrary to what the perception is.
Yeah, and it feels that way just because these top 10 teams in the SEC have so much more money to throw around because they are baseball schools. That's what they're built around. They all have football. They're all high-end football programs too. So you're starting to see a lot of these places that have high money for football are also starting to put that money into baseball. Places like Ohio State, man, that program was nothing 3 years ago. Now they got Justin Herron there. They got a great coach. They're putting money into the program. They made their first ever Big Ten tournament in like the last decade. The money is starting to trickle in, and you're starting to see that kind of transfer over to people like, hey, you know what? I like baseball too, because they can decide where their NIL money goes. You're going to have to start seeing a little bit more of that in Oregon, but I don't think it's that far off. I really think they were really close to having that be a good place. And the fact is, facilities and what you get as being an Oregon Duck athlete and the fact of being on campus in Eugene, there's a lot of positives. The only negative is that there's just not nearly as much NIL dollar amount.
There's also not as good a weather as other places in the country.
That's fair, but you get a great field with turf. I mean, you get to play year round. There's really, and the facilities for hitting and the lifting and everything, like, it's really a great place to play baseball now when you look at it. They didn't have any games rained out.
Yeah, and Waz is just awesome, and I wanted to get you out of here on just your impressions of him and the national perspective on Mark Wasikowski, because I hope he's Oregon's coach until everyone's up in arms demanding that he's gone or he decides he doesn't want to coach anymore. I mean, he's been to the tournament 6 years in a row and getting to the second weekend, 3 of the last 4. I mean, this is a program that's only existed since 2009. I mean, it's really not that old in the grand scheme of things. And I think what he has done has been awesome to see. And I particularly was encouraged by this past year because he made the right hire at pitching coach. He needed to do that. And I mean, look at what Will Sanford was as a true freshman. And then he just had one of the best pitching seasons in Oregon history. So what are your impressions of Waz and what you see him doing with the program?
Mark is one of my favorite coaches in the entire country, and he's a very personal guy. His players like him. He cares about his coaching staff. He cares about his players. He cares about the University of Oregon. That's hard to find in college baseball today. There's a lot of places where coaches get hired in. They're there to kind of get that paycheck and kind of get that team in so they can get their next job. Doesn't feel like Mark wants to do that. It feels like Waz wants to be at Oregon. He wants to make this program good. He wants to see it succeed. He wants to get him to that next level. And I think if I'm Oregon, I'd hire the guy for a lifetime contract and say, hey, you're our coach until you decide to leave. Like, honestly, because that's the kind of guy you want in this program to keep building this thing up. You're not getting to super regionals like that very often. Look at some of these SEC teams. Mississippi State didn't make the tournament after winning a national title. They missed out. Like, you're not getting this kind of success continuously like you're seeing at Oregon very often. So if you're looking at the national landscape, one, he's a tremendous coach, and I think that if there ever was a big SEC job, they'd come knocking on his door, but I don't think he'd leave. I mean, I hope he wouldn't, but I think that he would be really loyal to the Oregon Duck program for giving him the opportunity, and that he has succeeded with that opportunity. So if I'm the Duck administration, I'm trying to give this guy as big of a contract as I can for as long as possible and keep him around.
That's what I would certainly do, but hey, I'm just me. What power do I have, really? Mark, if anyone wants to hear more of your work, where can they check you out?
The College Baseball Show. You can go check us out on Twitter or YouTube and Spotify and Apple. We have all of our podcasts out 3 a week during season, and we'll keep going through the off season. Awesome.
Mark, thank you so much for taking the time. I know we appreciate it. When we get back, I've got another top 10 list because I just love generating controversy on the show. At least that's how some of you out there view it. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's not good. Communication is key, and that's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations, like Oregon, know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. That's true in sports, just like it is in business. And you want things to be consolidated. You want them to be uniform, conformed, the same, easy to follow, all in one place. These are all words that are good. And Odoo is going to help get your business logistics in the same place. That's what you want. You want it to be easy. You want it to be fluid. You want it to flow. You've got to simplify, and Odoo is going to help you do just that. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Click the link as you see it below and check out Odoo today. Okay, before I wrap with today's top 10 list, I have to admit that I made a mistake. I know I am imperfect. I am not going to blame it on my recent and brief health issues or travel delays and such, and nope. I made a mistake without question. On my top 10 running backs list yesterday, or whenever you listen to or watch this show, I overlooked Bucky Irving. That's unquestionably true. And I let the nostalgia in me go too far to put LeGarrette Blount on that particular list. Bucky Irving should be on there. And frankly, I'd probably have him above CJ Verdell because I think Bucky is a much more talented running back than Verdell, who was also very productive, but Bucky was very productive with the Ducks. And that was just a straight up oversight. It happens. I'm not perfect. I'm sorry if that's tearing down the image you have of me in your head. But alas, that was a mistake. So today's list, as requested by one of you out there, if you've got one, by all means, let me know. This is just straight up hard. This was so difficult. So many worthy, recognizable guys are on this list. You can't pick one criteria for it. Today's list is the top 10 Oregon football players. This is, of course, to celebrate 10 years of the Locked On Podcast Network. Top 10 Oregon football players in the Dan Lanning era. Now, considering positions and the difficulty of playing that position is something I'd say I mostly avoided. Mostly. Because I think that's the best way to go about it, to get a list like this. So the reason I landed on all of these guys, this took me almost half an hour to put together, just for this one segment. But that's how much I value you, the audience out there. I'm not half-assing anything out here. Except for that time I made an oversight. But that wasn't because I didn't put the time in. I just made an oversight, made a mistake. It happens. All right. Looking forward here. I'm looking at the guys that if you made an all-time Oregon team in the Dan Lanning era, there's no way you could put together a list and not put these guys on it in some form or fashion. Or at least, I don't think you can have any objections. Now, you could say, well, what about this guy? What about that? I get it. There are some tough names to leave off this list. For those watching on YouTube, get ready. Here we go. Top 10. Number 1, Bo Nix. If Oregon's defense had showed up and been able to stop Washington and Las Vegas in 2023, Bo Nix wins the Heisman Trophy. That is given to the best player in college football. So, yeah, Bo Nix is number 1. Number 2, a guy I have overlooked on a segment before, and I heard about it from many of you out there, so I will never forget his name again. Jackson Powers Johnson was literally named the best at his position, winning the Remington Award in the entire country. I had him a little lower, and then I remembered that as I was putting the list together, and I went, well, if that's not part of the criteria, then what are we talking about here? So he's on there at number 2. Number 3, Christian Gonzalez. I don't know if you could make a more perfect corner. I wish every corner was like Christian Gonzalez. He can do everything, and he is currently an all-pro in the NFL. He single-handedly kept that game against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Seahawks won, by the way, 29-13, Super Bowl champs. He single-handedly kept 14, well, they kicked a field goal. He kept 11 points off the scoreboard on his own. That game would have been 40-13 if Christian Gonzalez had not been healthy and ready to go. So there are not many guys from that 2022 team. In fact, I believe JPJ was on the team that year. But nobody else from that 22 roster are on this list. Derek Harmon is at number 4. He is among the most disruptive defensive linemen I think Oregon has ever had. I think on the interior. Haloti Ngata is number 1 in my lifetime. I'm sure some of you will have some older names to throw out there, but for guys that I have watched or remember watching at least a little bit, which is what I tend to keep these lists to, or else it gets a little bit challenging to just comb through box score stats. Derek Harmon is as good as Oregon has had. Josh Connerly at left tackle, also as good as Oregon has had. First round pick of the Commanders. I initially had them in the other spot. The reason I landed on going Harmon at 4 and Connerly at 5 is that I think Harmon made his presence felt more consistently than Connerly did. He plays a more impactful position because you can actually rack up stats, but I didn't feel like Harmon ever had that many missteps or did that many things wrong. Also a first round pick. So the top 5 there, 4 first round picks and 1, I think, second round pick, Jackson Powers Johnson, who's with the Raiders now. My guy Clint Kubiak. Another first round pick, Dylan Thieneman is there at number 6, played at an All-American caliber level this past season. I think Oregon is going to miss him this year, and Coy Parrish is the best immediate replacement that Oregon could have come up with. I don't expect him to be as good as Thieneman was, though Coy Parrish is an all-conference caliber safety in the Big Ten, without question. At number 7 is where I put Dante Moore. And by the end of this season, if I were to do this list again next year, he might go higher on the list. And he obviously was not a Heisman finalist this past year, even though Dylan Gabriel was. I know which guy I would rather have, even though I love Dylan Gabriel. That was a tough guy to leave off the list. I felt like Gabriel getting that nod was more about Oregon's team success than the individual player. And Dante Moore, man, it's easy to think about the Indiana pick 6. You can also think about the Iowa keyhole throw if you want, and that is one of the best throws I've ever seen an Oregon quarterback make. And I think he's going to be spectacularly good this year. I could have put him below Emmanuel Pregnon, who was on an All-American team for his lone season at Oregon. I could have put him higher on this list. I really could have. And he leaves a gaping hole for this 2026 season that I talked about a bit on the last show. I don't know who's going to start at left guard, but filling that void is going to be very difficult. I've got him ahead of Poncho because I believe Pregnon was a better offensive lineman last year. They were both very good. Obviously, you don't get a Joe Moore Award finalist without having a lot of talented guys up front. Poncho was a finalist for the Remington Award. He's probably going to be seen as the favorite to win it going into this year because I think both finalists from last year are gone. But there are a lot of great linemen in the country, of course. And number 10 was probably the hardest slot. To me, I went with Tatum Tuioti because I dubbed him the defensive MVP after this year, which he absolutely was. I considered Bryce Betcher for this spot. I think Tuiotti's a better overall football player, though Bryce is quite good. You can't go on stats alone because you have a greater opportunity to rack up stats as a tackling machine at linebacker than you do at literally any other position except maybe safety, but linebacker's probably number one. You look at the tackle leaders in college football every year, it's almost always a linebacker. And Bryce is a very good player, all conference selection. Like, I'm not trying to sit here and tell you he wasn't good at all. I just think of who was more important to the defense last year. I'd argue Tatum Tuioti. Some people might argue Bryce Betcher, and that's a perfectly fine debate to have, but that's the 10 I came up with. Think about the guys that are not on this list. Troy Franklin and Tez Johnson are not on this list. Heck, Evan Stewart is not on this list. Brandon Finney is not on this list. And the list of guys that are not on it that are very good goes on and on. But, you know, when you bring in talent like Dan Lanning does, it's going to be a tough list to make. So I feel pretty good about that. I feel pretty good about that list. I don't think there's a glaring omission like yesterday. So my bad, Bucky. I will never let that happen again. But who would you have put on the list? Who do you think I should have put on that I left off? Let me know in the comments below. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.